Call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. It is 7:31 p.m. Today is September 10th, 2025. This is the meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to Borough Council chambers unavailability and is in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this remote meeting was published in the Bergen Record, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last 4 digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address clearly prior to making a public comment. With that, I'll ask Ms. Steinley to call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Present.
Mr. Caslin,
Here.
Ms. Boland is excused tonight. Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mr. Kanigo,
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Here.
Councilman Glass. Oh, I couldn't hear you, but he is here. Mr. Gautier,
Here.
Mr. Salva,
Here.
and Ms. Levine.
Here.
All right, also present, we have our board planner, Mr. Behrens.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. The first item on our agenda this evening under approval of minutes is minutes from our meeting of August 27, 2025. A draft set of the minutes were circulated prior to this evening's meeting for the review by the board, and I open it to the board for comment or questions on the minutes as presented. There being none, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kanigo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons.
And everyone's eligible except for Mr. Caslin and Mr. Gautier.
Okay. So with myself and Mr. Gautier recusing ourselves, all in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move along now to our next agenda item under memorializations. Applicant is Ernesto Martinez. Property is 885 Park Avenue, Block 208, Lot 12. We have resolution granting variance relief. Drafts of the resolution was circulated to the board for review prior to this evening's meeting, and open it to the board for comment or questions on the draft resolution. There being none, I'll look for a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kanigo.
Just a note, I was recused on this, so I won't be voting.
Yes, so I'll only call those eligible to vote. Mr. Caslin
Yes.
and Mr. Gibbons
Yes.
and Mr. Kanigo.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay. Our next item under memorializations, applicant is KCK Bagel Shop. The address is 55 Kindercamack Road, Block 1413, Lot 5. Resolution granting site plan approval for a retail food establishment. The draft of the resolution was circulated to the board prior to this evening's meeting for review, and open it to the board for comment or question on the resolution.
So, Mr. Chairman, we did receive email correspondence from the applicant's attorney, Mr. Barrett. They're just working out some final details with the landlord, so they asked us to hold the memorialization until the meeting of the 24th.
Okay. Do we need to, we don't need to
No,
take
we-
any action on that?
No,
Just do it.
we can just
Okay.
wait. Yep.
Okay. Then we will hold on the memorialization of that resolution. We'll move now on our agenda down into discussion. This is a continuation of a prior discussion among the board regarding the location of HVAC units. and emergency generators on residential dwellings. So I think Mr. Behrens is here, and I don't think we have Mr. Depkin yet. But I know that Mr. Depkin had circulated some notes on proposed language regarding the locating of ground-mounted air conditioners and generators. Mr. Behrens, I don't know if you wanted to start off with some remarks from your perspective.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Hello, everyone. And I did review Steve's recommendations. And so if we recall going back just a few years ago, the ordinance was silent as far as how to regulate air conditioning units and generators. So at the building department, there was always this question, as far as what should the requirement be? And it was always kind of a loose thing where I think we just referenced the accessory structure requirements, meaning that it had to be in a side or rear yard and at least 4 feet from the property lines, or at least that was sort of my kind of informal policy. Even there was nothing super specific to point to in the ordinance, but because it was becoming a common problem and a lot of pushback as far as what the actual regulations were, and some of these things popping up in front yards where, you know, some people might think that that's not the best place for them, or, you know, might create an eyesore or something like that. It seemed to make sense that it should just be clear as far as how the ordinance regulates these things. And I would offer that, you know, a lot of ordinances that we review these days in other towns in New Jersey do regulate them specifically. And so when we revised our ordinance to address a number of issues, we did include air conditioning units and generators as accessory buildings and structures to clarify that they should have setbacks of at least 4 feet and be located in side and rear yards, except there was one conflict in the ordinance that once you treated them as accessory buildings and structures, you had to have them at least 5 feet from the building, which wasn't the intent. It just happened to be a conflict in the ordinance that wasn't picked up. And so obviously when you install these things, you generally locate them in close proximity to the house for a number of reasons, for practical reasons. And so I think when those applications were being reviewed at the building department, they would run into this conflict of, you know, and in one sense it would be compliant, then it would be non-compliant. So I think Steve has given us his recommendation as far as how to clean that up. I think there's probably two approaches here. One is that we just create an exception to the requirement that these things have to be at least 5 feet from the house. You could exempt air conditioning units and generators from that. That would be one way to clean it up. Or I'll share on my screen what his recommendations are, which I think also would work fine. Bear with me while I get those up. And certainly he'd be the one enforcing those. So hopefully, can you all see?
Yeah.
I assume you can. So very clearly, he just suggests that there's a certain standard for air conditioning units. Basically, it says shall not extend more than 4 feet into any required side or rear yard and no closer than 7 feet to the property line. I think this might be referencing the current Oradell ordinance. And so he underlines the dimensions of 4 feet and 7 feet because there's a question of, you know, whether or not we should, if we go along with this, whether that should be modified, you know, consistent with River Edge's lot configurations. And then there's a separate standard for generators where he has it not more than 5 feet from the building, usually a house, and at least 10 feet from a property line. And in both cases would have to be in a rear or side yard. And the ordinance would allow for replacement of existing ground-mounted air conditioning units in the front yard, which I think makes sense and frankly would alleviate a high influx of applications to the board. So if the board wants to go this route, I think it's just a question of getting the right dimensions. Otherwise, I think it's fairly straightforward. And I would say the overall objective is, one, again, encourage them to be located in either a side yard or the rear yard, to have a minimum setback from property lines because these things tend to generate noise. Generators get exercised about once a week for anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes, and they're pretty loud when they go on. And so these would, the ordinance is an effort to, again, try to minimize impacts to adjacent residential properties primarily. And just thinking out loud and how our lots are configured, if you make the setbacks 7 feet on residential properties, our minimum lot yard setbacks are 7.5 feet. So in most cases, you'd probably end up with air conditioning units in the rear yard just by default because you'd run out of room. And the same thing might apply to generators. So if you wanted to allow them in the side yards, you might want to tailor those dimensions down a little bit. Or, feel free to come up with your own opinion. So is it better to keep this up while we go around the horn to get feedback, or?
Yeah, it probably makes sense. And I see that Mr. Depkin's joined us. So good evening, Mr. Depkin.
Good evening, Chairman. Sorry again, having issues with the town computer hooking up to Wi-Fi, but I'm on my personal one now. So
Okay.
if you need me for anything, let me know.
Yeah, so Mr. Barons, was just starting with his remarks based on his review of what your proposed language was regarding the amendments to the ordinance. So I'll turn it to you and see if you wanted to supplement what you've submitted to us for review.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I heard a little bit of what Tom was saying, and if everybody's sort of saw the documents that I sent. I think you need to take into consideration air conditioners. There's more air conditioners in the municipality than generators, but generators are growing fast. Air conditioners tend to run a lot longer, make noise, and in regards to side yards, there's a minimal side yard space that's allowed in River Edge. But as far as the distance from the structure, air conditioners are usually a foot away. I don't think you want it out any further than that, but if there's for some reason you have to situate it further out, I would give it a minimal distance out, and maybe have a sense of having it a distance away from the property line. The same with the generator. The generator is usually we go by the installation guides, and it needs to be a distance away from combustibles, the house, and that's usually about 18 inches or 2 feet. Adding about 2 feet, 2.5 feet for the generator, you're into the side yard 4 feet. So if you want to look at maybe a maximum of 4 feet from the structure, and whatever you decide, a minimum from the side property line. As I heard Tom say, I think it's going to push the generators to the rear of the property, or the air conditioners also. I don't think there's a need for the generators or air conditioners to be in the front of the property. I don't think you want to see that driving down the road, these items in the front yard. For existing air conditioners that need to be replaced, I would suggest they can stay in place. Replace them if they are in the front yard, which some are. Maybe just stipulate that they need to be screened from view. As far as the side yard, it is what it is. If they're there, I don't think you want to have the residents go through the expense of moving, gas lines and electrical lines and everything to comply. But as far as new items going in, a lot of the properties have that short side yard, but the other side yard might be a little bit more advantageous to use that area. Generators usually go on a maintenance start mode, and it goes for about maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You can range those times for going on those test modes. You can stipulate hours that they could be running, but as far as the use of the generators, power is going out on the neighborhood. I don't think it matters about sound going off as a generator's running. if you recall, when power's out, you open up your doors, you can hear generators all over the street. I think the test mode would be more something that the board would want to, take a look at and make some restrictions. But as far as the air conditioners, everything off the house as minimal as possible, but enough that you can service them and enough that they meet the installation guides. The areas that I was looking at that maybe you want to put these regulations in would be yard requirements. That's section 416-13. You could add those to the general applications. It goes down to 6, parentheses 6. You could add 7 for air conditioners and 8 for generators. And if you would like to keep them in accessory structures, you could, add them in that area also, just listing the air conditioners. I think the more of the definition should go into yard regulations. That's basically, all I have on this items, unless anybody has any questions.
I'll add just 2 more comments. So one thing would be to just confirm how we'll deal with corner lots, because sometimes they have an issue with compliance, and maybe we don't give them separate relief, but just a thought. Again, to come up with the right dimensions, and just I guess just so we make sure we have enough flexibility so the board doesn't get inundated with applications. So again, that comes back to the dimensions, which I'll
Okay,
defer to the group.
that's a good question, Tom. As far as corner lots, there's 2 front yards. So if it's existing, items there, they would need to be screened. But then you have the 2 yards, that'd be the rear yard or the side yard, and a lot of times the corner lots have a larger side yard than normal. But if you want to keep it tight, then put it in the side yard. Then give a more of a minimal distance from the property line. Make sure it stays in regards to the structure, close to the structure, but you want to give a smaller distance off the property line. Again, air conditioners run constantly. Sometimes there's 2 air conditioners, units, the condensate, the condensers, they'll be there side by side, sometimes 3. And they do put off some noise. And if your neighbor likes fresh air and wants to, open the windows, that's going to be, that would be an issue, I would think. But as far as the corner lots, I think you keep it as, the 2 front yards as everything else. And, most of these will go in the rear yard. I think the reason that people want to put them in the side yard is because they don't want to deal with them personally in the rear yard. But then you have to consider the neighborhood. You got to consider your neighbors.
Right. All right. I appreciate that.
Comments on the board? Anyone in particular want to make a comment on what we're discussing here in terms of proposal? I mean, from my perspective, I would say that I would say screening and sound mitigation are probably 2 key items that we should think about, as well as on this, and I guess that could probably be put into the regulation section. That's probably more for the generator in terms of the screening. Anyone else on the board have any thoughts on this? I'm going to start with Mr. Pfeffer. He's got a hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Depkin, you mentioned that generators should not be placed near combustibles. Is there a specific prohibition of that somewhere in some provision? Or if not, maybe we should figure out a place to put that in as well.
Well, it goes by if there's nothing in the code, in the state codes, then it goes by the installation guide of the unit. So they will determine, the distance away. rule of thumb is 18 inches. It's a motor. It has a muffler. Heats up. You can't have it near any openings. You can't have a window, basement window, or any type of window or any type of opening near that area. So that's something that the construction department takes care of in regards to locations when we issue a permit for generators. But as far as a rule of thumb, I would leave it up to the installation guide. That would be something. But if you want to make a maximum distance, away from the structure, as I said, rule of thumb is 18 inches. You want to go 2 feet off the structure or something in that range.
Well, no,
I
think, yeah,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I think the distance from the structure seems reasonable to me, but I was just focusing on the combustibles issue because sometimes, people have propane tanks outside their house or other things. But if it's covered, so you're saying that it doesn't, your feeling is it doesn't need to be added somewhere because it's contained in the construction guide. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Even combustibles, that's bushes. So you have to clear away bushes from that generator. Some of the generators will indicate the exhaust and keep it away from that area. Some will just say 18 inches from any combustible. So we take it as the entire generator unit itself and making sure that it's clear from those areas.
Right. So if we just add language that said per the manufacturer specifications would be covered.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said if we had language that just said, as far as combustibles, they'd be located per the manufacturer's recommendations, we would cover.
Personally, my opinion, I wouldn't mention anything in regards to distance away from combustibles. I would just state what you decide you want to do with the distance away from the structure and away from the property line. The permits themselves will dictate the distance from combustibles.
Okay, so that was my first question. I'm kind of thinking, and I just would be curious what other board members feel about this, is whether we still should say something, because frankly, I wasn't even aware that bushes are considered combustibles. So
I'm going to interrupt a second. I'm sorry. 2 people have their hands up.
yeah, I was just called on by the chair, so that's why I'm talking.
Yeah.
If there's a fire protection issue or a life safety issue, it's going to be in the building code.
Correct.
It's already in the construction code.
Okay, so that was my question. All right, that's
Yeah, so that's the answer.
Okay, perfect.
I think
That's-
Dario had his hand up first.
But I had,
Yeah,
I had another
I'm working
question.
my way down the list.
I had another question, if that's okay. It's a real quick question. In the section on generators, you have, and forgive me if people think this is a lawyer's type of question, but I can see lawyers taking advantage of this, so that's why I'm asking. In the section on generators, you say you have a reference to the rear or side yard of the main building or structure only, and then later you just have a reference to extend more than 5 feet from the building. And so, number one, I'm just wondering, is there some definition somewhere in the code of what constitutes the main building? And secondly, shouldn't we have the word main in front of both references to buildings, so there's no confusion that we're talking about different buildings? And
Yeah,
that's
that makes sense. Yes.
Well, and to answer your question about the main, I think if you substitute main for principal building, then that's
Or
Clear.
primary.
well, I think, Steve, I think where you're getting at is the principal building, right? Like the dwelling and
Correct.
not the garage. So
Yeah, correct.
I think
Yeah.
in zoning parlance, if you just say principal, then that might address
So
that.
that-
Just a thought.
That's fine.
yeah.
I've seen an instance. I've seen an instance where before this was put in adopted in the other municipality that put a generator by a detached garage. And neighbors really had an outcry in regards to that. So yeah, a principal building would be fine.
Okay, and just in both places where it says building.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kanigo.
Thank you. I guess my first question, and it may sound a little facetious, and I'm certainly not being facetious. Are we addressing a problem here that our town is facing regularly? Like, why are we addressing this problem now? Is this something that has been causing issues? Because the way I see it, if it's not, I think putting this in is going to start causing issues. Because I think the properties in this town have been so overbuilt. For example, down my block, you can go house after house after house. They all have the AC units on the side, and they're all within less than 4 or 5 feet because the houses are so wide, and they have been for years and years and years. I mean, I've lived here since 1984. So my question is, by putting this stuff in, I think we're going to start causing issues when people are making changes and so forth. So is there an active issue that we're addressing with this right now? Is there a problem that we're addressing?
You want me to?
Yeah, you go for, yeah, you're doing it now, so.
Yeah, I don't see many issues coming in at this point. I see it with new construction. We've had a few neighbors complaining about not utilities, but these items going into the side yard, and why can't they be placed somewhere else? Exactly the reason that we're trying to avoid, the noise on the side being so close to the other houses. I think as the municipality wants to go further with the renovations and so forth, maybe this is the point, or maybe you want to decide this is the point to maybe try to correct those situations for the neighbors, because it's right. River Edge has a lot of old, large developments. And people are coming in, contractors are coming in and flipping these houses and making them as large as they can. And they're very, very narrow properties on a narrow lot. And if that's the case, they, in my opinion, they are the ones that should be complying with maybe putting it in the rear yard. Whatever's existing now, I would suggest putting into the code that they can be maintained. But going from this point further forward, I would suggest getting them out of the smaller back side yards and putting them in the backyards to just to help the neighbors, in their comfort.
Because one of the things that you rightly underlined is, is it 4 feet? Is it 7 feet? What numbers are we going to use?
Mhm.
And in so many of the properties in River Edge, it's going to be impossible.
Right.
That's why it just seems like this is going to cause more problems. Is there a way that we can address the new constructions specifically and leave everything else the way it is? And I'm not talking about my house. It's not. It's fine. I'm just saying that I think it's going to be problem after problem after problem when things are.
Well, but they always have the rear yard. It's not that they're not going to be able to do it. It's just they're going to have to if they're going to install a new system, it would need to comply with the codes that you're proposing.
But we have a lot of undersized lots in River Edge. So,
Yeah.
taking away a rear yard from somebody, in an effort to preserve a side yard that can't be used seems to be counterintuitive, to be frank. We've got a lot of small properties, and then you're telling people, well, choose between air conditioning and having, a little bit of a rear yard and being able to be in the backyard. And on those small properties, is the rear yard really that much further than the side yard from the next door neighbor? Like, if I put it in the rear yard, it's going to be next to the house. It's probably going to be in the corner anyway, so it's going to be an extra foot away. So,
Yeah.
what are we really accomplishing by doing this?
In the side yard, you're building against a structure against a structure. In the rear yard, you have a little bit more open space where the sound could maybe travel out. It's up to the board. If you feel that it's not an issue for neighbors, then I think that's the main reason. As I was looking at these codes in regards to distance off the side yards. And if it fits, it fits. That's fine. If it doesn't, well, then you have a choice. You put it in the rear yard.
Well, I think that was my question to begin with, because I don't know if it's an issue or not. I'm not trying to say that it is one way or another. That's why I asked. That's why I began my question with, is this an issue that we're addressing? Is there a problem that the DPW or whoever else, the construction people are pulling their hair out about this, and now we're addressing it? Or are we doing this and now we're going to start like the corner lots and this and the undersized lots, and we're going to put different provisions for different things, and we're just going to cause problems down the line, and they're going to keep coming back to us and asking for variances. All of a sudden, people are going to come and say, well, I need a variance for this because the only place I can put this is here. And it's going to increase, the work for the board as well.
As I said before, it's not a major issue. I think it's an issue when new construction is going up or people are flipping the houses and putting additions on. But as far as I would try to avoid, bifurcating it into, okay, new construction, you're allowed to do this. If you do an addition, you're allowed to do this. If you have an existing house, you can do this. I would keep it, rather simple, and
I agree with that 100%. I agree.
Yeah, and again, stating there hasn't been a big complaints coming in, but there have been some.
And Daria, if I could just give my experience is similar to Steve's. We're really it's the flippers and builders that tend to push the envelope, and they're not invested in River Edge, and they just plop these things wherever the most convenient, cost-effective location is. And sometimes that happens to be in the front yard. Sometimes that's in the side yard with a 0-foot setback. So if you have no regulations, then it becomes a free-for-all. And I think it helps to at least have some guidelines. I agree we don't want to overly regulate our town. I 100% agree, and to have flexibility. But I do think it makes sense to have at least some guidelines that, again, doesn't make it a free-for-all. And this is a common regulation that other towns have and are starting to have. Not that we have to do what everyone else does, but I think other towns have similar experiences. And really the impacts are noise and visual impacts. So I know visual is somewhat subjective, but let's say, for instance, you plop them in the front yard, that tends to take away space for landscaping, for instance, and it might diminish the view of the neighborhood or whatever. But the sound issue is real. It's one that I've experienced. And when you do have houses that are close together and you have one or more units going at the same time, it does create that sort of echo effect and makes it louder than it might otherwise be. I do agree that where people have units, you should allow them to reinstall them and replace them. So when we talk about existing houses with narrow yards that so people have to repair and replace these things on a regular basis, and they should be allowed to do so, because like Steve said, when you have to relocate them for an existing house, there is a cost that's incurred for having to relocate the gas and the electric and et cetera. And I don't think we'd want to be inundated with applications for just replacements. But I think in River Edge, especially the newer houses, the additions, et cetera, we're seeing 4,000, 5,000 square foot houses now. We're kind of unheard of years ago, and they're requiring multiple units, 2, 3. I don't know what Steve sees, 3 or 4, units in some cases. That are being located in these places. So is this a first world problem? Probably, but again, there are real impacts, and again, those are primarily noise and aesthetics. I would offer.
My last quick question, and then I'll let everybody else talk, is 72 decibels. Is that reasonable? I don't know what that is. Is that?
It has been. Yes, that's normal.
I think
normal residential.
The problem with that, Dario, that's a good question. The problem with that is it doesn't say where it's going to be measured. So we really need to add that.
Well, it states it in the specifications of the unit. It says
no. Where's that 70? Where are you going to enforce that 72? Where are you going to take that? So we're
not going to enforce it in regards to standing out and listening to it and getting a measurement. It's what the specification.
It's the equipment rating. It's the
Correct.
Equipment rating.
Correct.
Okay, so I need to say that.
What's that term that you offered, Mr. Glass? The what rating?
The manufacturer's equipment rating.
Okay.
Dario, I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I just I was curious about that figure. If it was. That's it. All right, thank you. You answered all my questions. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna move to Mr. Gibbons.
Thank you. So a couple of questions. Is it better to have a setback for a side yard to the property line or to the neighbor's house? So you could have that, a short property line on my side, but it could be a long one to the neighbor. And it could be a short side on my side and going to the garage on the other side. So I understand that the reason here is to keep the noise from the neighbor. But, as Dario said, there's small properties. I live on one of those small properties. So is there a means of doing this? And really, if we're really trying to protect the neighbor from the noise, is it better to set a limit to the house next door or have some flexibility to allow to that next door? Does that make sense?
I always like to keep the codes simplistic. Then you're taking each property by itself and the neighbor's property, giving a measurement from the neighbor's house. Or if on that side it's a garage and there's no living space except for that garage, those things. I tend to like the property line, but it's the board's call.
I just see situations where we have these 50 by 100 lots, and now you take that unit and you put it in the backyard where they might not have a lot of space. And now you're forcing them to have that in the backyard. Again, I live on a small lot. My AC unit is in my backyard. It's in a horrible spot. I'd love to put a deck there, but I can't. So is there a way of helping those situations? Because you could have a large space between properties. And again, I don't want to make more work for you. You have enough to do, but I'm just thinking of those situations of, can we make an allowance for those situations for those, just to make it better and not annoy the neighbor?
Ryan, can I chime in on this?
Sure, please.
In regard to what you're saying, I get it, but I'm wondering if we measure from the neighbors instead of from the property line, then we're not allowing enough room for someone to pass along that side of the house. And I would think that we would, if someone put up a fence, now this would be a completely blocked side. And I'm thinking about our firefighters, I'm thinking about our police department. If they have to respond, there's youth or there's a burglary going on, they go down one side of the house, and I would think that we'd have to say at least 3 feet from the property line so that people could pass. But I don't know.
Even if it could be a minimal amount to allow,
I mean, I'd be good with that, but I think it would have to be at least 3 feet so that, a wheelbarrow and a police officer and a firefighter could get by.
Makes sense. How big? I mean, what are these typically, or what is the biggest? If you could tell me off the top of my head, Mr. Debkin, how
Size of the unit?
Yeah, I mean, what's a bigger size?
3 feet.
3 feet. So 3 feet plus 1.5 feet, right? Or we'll call it 2 feet. Right, off the house ish. So 5 feet is really what we're talking, right?
Right. Now your lowest zone in an R1 zone for a minimal side yard is 5 feet. That's for anything less than 60 feet width of the property. So you're in non-compliance right there. So they would have to put some.
So,
I think
so those people have no choice.
They have no choice, right?
Right. So I just like to try and find. And again, if nobody agrees with me, it's fine. But I'm just thinking of those properties, and you have that distance, and it can make sense to have it on the side, because a lot of times having these in the backyard is just it's difficult.
That was my point too, Ryan. That's exactly it. With some of these smaller properties, you got to give people a chance to be able to enjoy their backyards. And so if the only place they have is the side yard, we have to be able to make some exceptions. And like you said, 5 feet in some of the houses, and it's a lot of houses in town. It's not just a few. There's a lot of houses that are, one after the other. And now these builders, yes, they are building these houses bigger and bigger. So they're stretching the limits. but
Yeah.
we shouldn't
Maybe-
tap it
maybe-
down because of these builders. I mean, that's,
Maybe what you could do is you have three different setbacks in the R1 zone. And it's, let me see here. Less than 60 foot width of a property, the minimum is 5 feet. From 60 to 75 width, it's 6 feet. Anything above that, 75 and above, is 7.5 feet. So if you want to, I'm just thinking you want to give a distance, like a separate distance for each of those property widths, you could possibly do that.
Because it's hard to come up with one thing, because the proper side to put it on might be the big side, it might be the short side. You know, it's going to depend on every house where your garage is and where it all
Okay.
lines up.
All right.
And you can't have it on the garage side, right? I guess that's not really feasible.
Well, it depends. It's an attached garage.
Yeah.
And is it? It's in a side yard. So yeah, you could do that.
Just thinking, I don't know if I ever really see them that way.
Well, yeah, because what they're looking for when the contractor comes in, he looks to see where your gas line is.
Yeah, and it's
your
on the
electrical
other side. It's on the house
You know,
side.
what's the closest side? You know, so if you want to put it a short distance away from the property line, that's fine. You know, instead, if the big thing is you don't want it in the backyard for that property owner, then you keep it in the side yard.
And the other thing I'm thinking about is the corner lots. And again, some of those corner lots, the backyard is tight.
Mhm.
And you really have the front yard and you have the side front yard. So is it feasible, or does it even make sense to allow it on the side front yard with fencing? Because, you know, we're looking at the side street. We're not looking at the neighbor. You're really going to be 30 feet from the street. Does it make sense to allow the side front yard to have it if it's screened to some degree? Because again, a lot of these backyards, now granted now the code is different, but some of these backyards are really tight, you know, and that's really your space to live for most properties on a corner lot. You know, does it make sense to allow that on those lots, that it's not on the front yard, it's on the side front yard?
That sounds like a good option.
Yeah, well, that's what I got. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Godia?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to say I think Mr. Kanigo and Mr. Gibbons made some excellent points. First off, I think as far as what we were just talking about, the corner lots, I think most people, if they had it on the side front yard, I think they're going to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible if they're putting it, especially if they're putting in a new unit. As far as, you know, putting it in a side yard in general, you know, we're talking about structure up against structure. Not every house is that way. My house is next to the path, right? So also we're talking about setbacks from property line, but I do believe there could be exceptions if the other house is pretty far away, right? But I also see that there should be a pathway to walk, like the mayor had suggested. So, you know, I think those are all valid points. I also think, you know, if we're not having significant problems with this, maybe we could just put something in that says all new construction has to put these units in the rear yard. And in that kind of a scenario, you're not going to create a bunch of applications where we haven't really seen a lot since I've been on the board anyway. That's what I got.
So
I would
I
just think
think-
if it's new construction or new installation. Right? Does that make sense? Like the house didn't have central and now it does.
Okay, but let's say, Ryan, like you suggested, let's say the next house over, there's a significant distance between, say, one house and another house. So if there's that significant distance, what's the harm in putting it in the side yard?
And that's why I suggested it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But if
But
you're
The
using
only
that-
thing I
if
would
you're
say
using-
about that is what if they expand? You know, or
Well, if the person in the
Yeah,
in the
like the
house
neighbor.
next door decides to expand, well, that's on them, right?
I don't know.
That's their decision. That's their choice. No, just my opinion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about a minimum of 3 feet from the property line because I really think we have to make sure that our police, our firefighters, and that there is ability for construction. And wheelbarrow width, I think, is 3 feet. I agree that when it has 2 fronts, it would be nice for us simply to say that a properly screened side front, which is, I don't know what language that would be good so that they don't have to come to us because we just had that. And that was what I was recommending. If you remember at that meeting with the applicant who came forward, it would be nice if we could leave that to the building department when there's 2 side fronts and the 2 front yards, but really the non-front door front yard could have it. I would also, these are recommendations that are going to the council because this body doesn't create this ordinance or modify it, but it's going to send something to council. And I would like for it to be as clean as possible so that the council doesn't need to send it back and it can move forward after a discussion period and then go to ordinance. I personally think this is a good idea for us to do this. My question is this. If we simply say, if you're doing, my question, I don't know how to phrase my question, but this is what I notice. There are people keeping the front part of the house, the front wall, and tearing down everything else. Would that be considered new construction? And then could they get around it? I don't want a contractor creating a problem for a neighbor who's been a good neighbor for years, especially because the person actually doing the construction is not going to be living in that house. And the person living next to the house has been living there for years and they should be respected. So whatever language that is recommended to the council, I think needs to anticipate some of the workarounds that the contractors are doing when they're doing an addition or an improvement. I would think, though I'm not an expert in this, if the footprint is altered, the ordinance goes into effect. But I don't know if that's really how, because if you want to build up, you build up. If it's on the side yard, it's on the side yard. But if you change the footprint, then I think that would be fair to say you need to be compliant.
Or if one or more walls are taken down, because the footprint might be the same, but they still take down all the walls.
Yeah, maybe something like that. That might be good. That's my recommendation, and my recommendation is that we try to come to some consensus before we send it to the council, because this is the body that really sees this issue on a regular basis, and it'd be nice if we could send the council a clean recommendation for revision. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman.
I agree with what Mr. Pfeffer brought up, like the language should be consistent between the air conditioners and the generators. If you look at like the second line of both of those, I think they're trying to say the same thing, but they use different language. So I think we should use conforming language. In one place it says, and no closer than, and in another place it says under generators, and a minimum of. I think the air conditioner language is clearer. But anyway, regardless, we should conform because I think they both are intended to have the same meaning. Another comment is, I'm not sure ground mounted air conditioners is the right word. I think they're condensers, but I defer to Steve on that. But maybe we want to just say mechanical equipment. they're not really air conditioners per se. I don't know what the definition of air conditioners are already in the code or ordinance, but I think they're condensers that we're talking about, but possibly just use mechanical equipment. I think that's all I got, guys. Thank you.
I just wanted to offer, not to beat a dead horse here, but unless any board members have any, I think Mr. Glass's comments are relevant as well as the mayor's. But I also want to offer to give everyone some sense of comfort that this is really formalizing an existing policy, is my understanding. So even before my time, the borough was always enforcing at least a 4-foot setback. So again, even though it wasn't written in the ordinance, but whenever any such application came to the building department, that's the advice they would give to the plumber or whoever was installing it or the homeowner. They'd say it would have to be X amount of feet. And again, this really just codifies what that policy had been. I don't know, Steve, are you guys using any
Yeah,
specific standards these days?
We're still doing that. Yes.
Okay. So again, I think it may give you some comfort in that we've been enforcing this for, almost a decade, at least at this point. But I do think the number, as far as the dimensions, we need to get right, again, to create some amount of flexibility. And again, to emphasize that anybody who's got an existing system can repair, replace in kind, where in a non-conforming location.
Mr. Canigo.
Is it possible to either discuss or put in the ordinance something about screening the air conditioning units on the side on the smaller houses? This way, if there's some sort of screening, it reduces the sound, obviously, and it looks nicer for the neighbors. But if sound is what we're worried about, then wouldn't screening also accomplish some of this?
That's a good point. I think maybe if you want to give whether it's 4 feet off the property line or something on that nature, if there and if there's no fence, then you need some sort of sound barrier, which would be a fence, or maybe something closer to the unit that would fence that sound into the area and not to the neighbor's property.
Yeah, something for us to consider.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Just one other question about the 4 feet from the house, we'll just call it. Is there any world where an air conditioner needs to be 4 feet? We keep talking 18 inches, 2 feet. Is there a world where 4 feet is necessary? Do we need to be that far away from the house?
Well, no. Is there?
Can you think of an example where one needed to be that far? Like, do we need to allow them to be that
trying
far?
to think of one. Air conditioners are a little bit less restrictive than generators, because they don't form a possible fire hazard. And I can't think of any air conditioner that's been placed out further than that, other than the fact, like you were saying, in the rear yard by a deck or by stairs or something, and it's on that side yard, and the only thing you can do is go out a little bit further, or you want to go further away from those structures. But that doesn't seem to be a major issue, if any at all.
So I'm just thinking, do we need to allow that 4 feet? Because I think part of the problem was, if it's 4 feet away, that landscaper going through there and killing themselves, or I think that was part of the problem, that if they're too far away, it's a hazard.
Yes, it would be. You have lines that go there. If it goes out that far, electrical lines and gas lines would need to be protected. But I think with the size of the side yard setbacks, I think the main concern is off the property line.
But I just look at that one. Yeah, I was just looking at that one particular part of it. That do we need to allow 4 feet if that in reality isn't necessary? And I don't know if we want to welcome any problems of it being too far away and a landscaper hurting themselves or a homeowner hurting themselves or something like that.
Yeah. No,
So if it's not necessary, I would think 2 feet. But if you tell me if there's a world where 3 feet makes sense, then that's fine, but.
Well, if the distance from the house doesn't matter, then we could just leave it as no more than 3 feet from no closer than 3 feet from any property line. Then they could make it as close as they want.
But I think you don't want it further away from the house. You can have it 6 inches if that's allowable by the code, but
Yeah.
I don't think we want to have it. We don't want to have too much space between the house and the unit because that becomes a hazard for someone getting in there and using a weed whacker and
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Right. If you have a larger side yard, 10-foot side yard, then that would come into effect. You wouldn't
Right.
want it out there. Yeah.
Right. Or if it's in your backyard and you got 30 feet, I just wouldn't want someone thinking it's a great idea to put it further away from the house.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
and,
good-
and,
good
and Steve, I
point.
think the issue you're trying to prevent is where somebody plops their generator far from their house near the rear property line, for instance, and then the noise becomes the neighbor's problems versus
Yes,
Close to there.
that's more for the generators than they are for the air conditioners.
right.
The 2 feet away from the house for an air conditioner is fine as long as they're able to service it. That's the norm. The generator is the one that we tend to see some problems with, like they try to get it as far away as possible.
Mr. Mayor?
I don't know if, Mr. Gibbons, are you done? Okay.
Okay.
So, based on what Mr. Baring said about, and what Mr. Demkin confirmed, that our practice has been to say that it must be 4 feet off the property line. I would amend what I said from 3 feet to 4 feet, that I would recommend that we send to the council that the generator or air conditioner must be at least 4 feet from the property line. That way we're consistent with our past practice already.
Are we still exempting those properties that are smaller?
I would think not, because according to the testimony that Mr. Baring and Mr. Debkin says, this has been the standard that we've been holding the public to for I assume decades.
But I'm guessing that standard is something that they take from home to home, right? Because it's not been written down. So there's some times where these standards are enforced and sometimes that they are not. At least that's what's been happening to date. If that's the case, then we have to account for those variations that have been kind of built into the system that hasn't been codified to date. If we now put 4 feet as a hard number, that's where the problems arise with all these smaller properties, the ones where 59 feet or less in town that only have 5 feet. How are they going to possibly comply?
I think that we have to create ordinances, and then we have this board for variances. I know that might bring people to us, but I don't think it'd bring that many if what Tom and Steve has said been the practice for years and years and decades has been 4 feet. I think that that's reasonable. But nothing less than 3 feet would be my strong recommendation. But if
I agree with that. I'm again, if we haven't had it codified, we can't tell for a fact. And with all due respect to Mr. Behrens, but he's not an older gentleman, so he hasn't been here that long, although you have been quite a while. But 15, 20, 30 years ago, like, what are we talking about? Like, how long are we talking about that this 4 foot, distance that hasn't really been codified is? Now, if everybody wants 4 feet, that's fine, but I think it's going to cause problems. And maybe we don't even need to address that particular.
But that is your concern though with the replacement? Because I think I agree again.
Well, we said that we're exempting the replacements, right?
Well, right. So
They're there
I'm
already.
just-
It's not-
Are there? I'm just wondering how many instances there would be of brand new units. I know not every house in River Edge is air conditioned. There are window units and this and that, but it's just a question that I'm thinking about. How
No,
often?
you're right. It may not be that many, but still, it could end up screwing a few people down the line.
Yeah.
And those same people get to walk around River Edge watching all their neighbors having exactly the same spaces they have and having an air conditioner where they're being told now that they can't because we put this particular ordinance into effect that wasn't there before. And then maybe before, Tom goes to the area and says, oh, well, judging by the fact that the other house is farther away and there's plenty of room on the side. This really wouldn't be something that affects anybody, so we would allow this. But now we can't allow it because it's been codified at 4 feet. And that's what I'm talking about. So even if it screws just a couple of people down the line, it's not right. And we don't need to necessarily do it. That's what I'm saying. Like even in codifying this, we don't necessarily need to put that 4 feet, but whatever.
Tom or Steve, to explain how, like, in practice, you guys have been this has been managed. I'm not clear. Like, how did you treat ground mounted condensers, and how have you, what part of the ordinance, what did the ordinance say? What's our existing interpretation that's been used? I'm not crystal clear on that. And I know the mayor's suggesting that we try to be consistent with how it's been practiced to date. So can you explain that? Would it be helpful? Yes, Steve, can you kind of explain that? How?
Yeah, well, there's the document that I sent. It's the current land use codes. It's under accessory buildings or or structures.
Right.
I don't know if that's where it should be, but so be it. It stipulates in regards to it's not permitted in the front yard. And then it more or less goes by I think what they would interpret as a garage or a shed or something like that. I know accessory building or structure shall be located closer, than 5 feet.
So this mechanical equipment has been managed or regulated as a accessory building or structure.
That's how it's defined in the code.
So
that was my question. Okay.
If I can add, last year we made some revisions to accessory structures and buildings, and we had included HVAC units and equipment like that as accessory building or as accessory structures for the purposes of setbacks. But that in doing so, we created this issue where air conditioners had to be 5 feet away from houses, and so that's what precipitated this conversation.
Right.
I would recommend taking it out of accessory structures and just leaving it in yard regulations. What's permitted in the yard? That's yard regulations. So what's permitted in the front yard? What's permitted in the side yard? And have 2, 7 and 8 add that to add air conditioners and generators, and then give your qualifications or designs or regulations in those 2 paragraphs.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So next steps. Tom and Steve.
Yes, sir.
Based on what you've heard this evening, can you take another run at massaging the language here to a more refined product where we can have another look at this and ultimately?
Yeah, maybe we could have I'm not going to say committee, but Tom and the attorney also, and just go back and forth, put the legalese in, and Tom and I can, give the distances and the definitions. Yeah, that's fine.
Probably makes sense to try to move this along.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, comments from the board? Okay. That's it for then on our agenda for this evening, unless anyone else has anything further to discuss.
If I may have a point of privilege for a moment.
Sure. Tom, you can stop sharing your screen if you would. There we go. Thanks.
So the handicap foundations have been put in to the front of Borough Hall, and then the handicap ramps have been put in. The paving is going in right now. With luck, Borough Hall will probably get a TCO with any luck somewhere in mid-September. Mr. Demkin's doing a phenomenal job of holding our feet to the fire. We appreciate that. So hopefully we'll be able to open the building, but that does not mean that we'll be able to move the land use board back into the building immediately. We'll need to bring in filing cabinets. We'll need to bring in personnel. There's still mics. So there is an off chance that our next meeting of the 24th may be in person. We'll see. But if not, then the first meeting in October will, I would think, most definitely be when we return to chambers. I want to thank Edwin for looking at different ways of seating all of us, because we're a much bigger group than the council. So I want to thank him for everything he's done. And I want to also take a moment to thank this board for doing a great job under very difficult circumstances. These many years we've been out between COVID and then with the building. The building was about to be condemned when we left. So because of the structural failure of the second and first floor, due to the weight of the filing cabinets, several hundred pounds each, and their years inside a building that was built as a residential instead of as a commercial building. So I just wanted to say thank you for working with us remotely, and that's probably what we're going to be going forward with. Probably October we'll return to the building, but there is a chance that we'll return to the building on September 24th, but we'll see.
Mr. Alter.
Yes, the next meeting on the 24th must be on Zoom because it's already been noticed.
Oh, there.
It's a Zoom meeting, so we can't change that. And also, just everybody, I had left envelopes at the police dispatcher's desk for everybody with documents for the next meeting on the billboard, surveys that have changed and site plans that have changed. I noticed everybody today, so I emailed everybody today. So when you have a chance, please pick them up at the police desk.
Edwin, I would think that's still a D variance, and so the councilman and I would be excluded. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You got a hall pass, Mr. Mayor.
Actually, do not enter. Do not.
Anything else from the board?
Just a question, is the building department going back to Borough Hall, or are they staying where they are?
No, they're going to stay where they are.
Okay.
We looked into that many different ways, and one of the benefits of where they are, other than the ladies being very happy, is that the contractors have better parking, because when the building department was where it was, there was always an issue with the building department, the builders, the contractors getting into the building because parking is so incredibly limited, and both the contractors and the secretarial staff felt that this was a better site for them. And we will be keeping records, permanent records, long-term records at Borough Hall. We're bringing back all the records that are currently off-site. But the building itself and the health department will stay down there in its current building.
Okay, yeah, it's a nice spot. Just figured
Where are they?
They're in the old, I think, post office, or I
it
don't
was
know.
the Shade Tree.
The train station.
Train
At the
station.
train
It
station.
was,
Everbridge
yeah,
Station.
it was before
Yeah.
Shade Tree was something else. It's in
Used to be a coffee stand at one point.
yeah, Mr. Melito did a phenomenal job of renovating that building, and we don't want to leave any of our buildings idle. So it was another consideration.
Yeah, it's a nice spot. I was wondering if it was staying there, so that works.
Okay.
All right.
If nothing else, I will look for a motion to close the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
We have one,
Second.
Mr. Glass and Mr. Gibbons, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Night,
opposed?
everyone.
I
Night all.
Night,
All right.
everyone.
Yeah, everyone.
Stand adjourned at 8:40 p.m.